I, Brigadier Theophilus Yakubu Danjuma, being appointed a member of the Supreme Military Council, swear that I will not directly or indirectly reveal such matters as shall be debated in the council, in the said council, and committed to my secrecy. So help me God.
I, Captain Olufemi Olumide, being appointed a member of the Supreme Military Council, swear that I will not directly or indirectly reveal such matters as shall be debated in the said council and committed to my secrecy. So help me God.
Once.
Fellow Nigerians, events of the past few years have indicated that despite our great human and material resources, the government has not been able to fulfill the legitimate expectations of our people. Nigeria has been left to drift. This situation, if not arrested, would inevitably have resulted in chaos and even bloodshed. In the endeavor to build a strong, united, and virile nation, Nigerians have shed much blood. The thought of further bloodshed, for whatever reasons, must, I am sure, be revolting to our people. In my National Day broadcast, I outlined the political program of the federal military government and prescribed measures necessary for achieving the aims of the program. One of such steps to be taken was the appointment of a constitution drafting committee whose responsibility it would be to produce an initial draft of a constitutional arrangement which would provide a sound basis for the continuing existence of a united Nigeria. This is not the first time, of course, that we as a people have participated in the fashioning of a constitution for our country. First, there was the experiment of a unitary government which was imposed by the colonial government. Then a federal system which carried us into independence. And finally, a modified version of federalism which lasted rather tenaciously until January 1966.
The assassination of Murtala Muhammad. Murtala Muhammad was a charismatic Nigerian military leader who became the country's fourth head of state in 1975, after leading a successful coup that overthrew the government of General Yakubu Gowon. However, his time in power was tragically cut short on the morning of February 13, 1976. On that fateful day, Murtala Muhammad was on his way to work in his Mercedes-Benz car, accompanied by his aide-de-camp and driver. As they drove through the busy streets of Lagos, they were suddenly ambushed by a group of armed men who opened fire on the car. The attack was swift and deadly. Murtala Muhammad was hit by several bullets and slumped over in his seat, while his aide-de-camp and driver were also killed in the hail of gunfire. The attackers then fled the scene, leaving chaos and confusion in their wake. News of the attack quickly spread throughout Nigeria and the world. People were shocked and saddened by the sudden and violent death of a leader who had only been in power for a little over 6 months. The country was plunged into mourning as citizens tried to come to terms with the loss of a man who had promised to bring about much-needed change and reform. In the aftermath of the attack, investigations were launched to try and identify the perpetrators and bring them to justice. The investigation led to the arrest and trial of several suspects, including Dimka, a lieutenant colonel in the Nigerian army, who was found guilty of masterminding the assassination.
Murtala Muhammad had dressed up for work. His aides were prepared to drive him to work. His workplace at the time was Dodan Barracks, which was the seat of government. Murtala must have bid his wife Ajoke and his 6 children farewell, with a promise to return home at the close of work. Murtala set out in his black Mercedes saloon car, driven by his official driver. He drove through George Street, and on approaching the Federal Secretariat in Ikoyi, there was a traffic jam, and Murtala's vehicle waited to observe the traffic. Murtala did not know that he was not going to be alive beyond the traffic point. Some armed soldiers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Bukasoka Dimka, had positioned themselves at a petrol station in the opposite direction. They were dressed in long flowing babariga, and their weapons were hidden in the babariga. As Murtala's vehicle waited for the traffic to clear, the soldiers drew closer and opened fire directly at the Mercedes-Benz. The shooting was sporadic and gave the occupants no chances of survival. Murtala Muhammad was killed. His ADC, Lieutenant Akintunde, also died on the spot. The vehicle, which was riddled with bullets, is preserved till today at the National Museum, Lagos. At the time of his death, Murtala Muhammad had only been in office as military head of state for 200 days. Murtala was only 37 years old at the time. Murtala was flown from Lagos to Kano, where he was buried in accordance with Islamic rites. Lieutenant Colonel Buka Soka Dimka, the mastermind of Murtala's assassination, could not take over the reins of power. His coup thus went down in history as an unsuccessful coup. A couple of things worked against Dimka. Immediately after the assassination of Murtala Muhammad, Dimka was at Radio Nigeria, calm in their respective spots. No divisional commander will issue orders or instructions until further notice. Any attempts to foil these plans from any quarters will be met with death. You are warned. It is all over the 19 states. All borders A and C are closed until further notice. Curfew is imposed from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you. We are all together. It is also reported that Dimka had made a quick trip to the British High Commission, where he met with the British High Commissioner Sir Martin Lequains and told him to get in contact with Yakubu Gowon, who at the time was in London, having earlier been removed from office by a military coup led by Murtala Muhammad. Dimka then told the High Commissioner to reach out to Yakubu Gowon and tell him to proceed to Togo and await further instruction. The High Commissioner declined his request. It was thus not clear whether Dimka executed the coup to enable him succeed Murtala Muhammad as head of state, or to enable him pave way for General Gowon to return to Nigeria and continue in office as head of state.
It was around this time that Dimka traveled to Madrid on official duties. En route to London, Dimka met a retired senior government official who is now under arrest. During conversations with this fellow, Dimka alluded to some discontent with the way the country was being governed and regretted the change of government in July 1975. He was then invited to spend a few days in London on his way back from Madrid for further discussions. While there, Dimka met and held discussions with General Gowon, who told him that everything was ready and he, Dimka, would be fully briefed by Bisalla on his return to Nigeria. Based on irrefutable evidence obtained by the Board of Inquiry, Gawon has already been asked to come home and defend himself. An invitation has already been extended to Gawon to come and defend himself. We are already taking steps, both diplomatic and legal, to see to the extradition of Gawon to Nigeria. I think further than that, I'm not prepared to say any more now.
While Dimka was at Radio Nigeria running the national broadcast, serious efforts were being made by the military to crush Dimka's coup. There was a counter broadcast from Benin by the then brigade commander, Colonel Issa Buka, disassociating other army units from the coup. There was another broadcast from Kaduna and another one from Calabar by the then brigade commander, Colonel Maman Vatsa. University students from Lagos and Ibadan also took to the streets to protest the coup. The coup attempt eventually failed. About 7 hours later, when Colonel Ibrahim Babangida surrounded Radio Nigeria with armored tanks manned by soldiers under his command and moved personally into the studio unarmed to have a conversation with Dimka, whom he described as a close friend during his recent interview with Channels Television. It is said by some that Dimka was a lover of champagne, and that Babangida went to meet Dimka at the radio station with a bottle of champagne with full knowledge that Dimka would be excited by it. Without much ado, the coup plotters were dislodged from the radio station and Dimka escaped. Dimka first ran to Jos and then to Afikpo in the then Anambra State. Radio announcements were made every 15 minutes, calling on everyone who sees Dimka to immediately report him to the nearest police station or army post. Dimka was a smart man and was able to beat the roadblocks without being noticed. Dimka would have escaped to any neighboring country unnoticed, but his stopover at Afikpo to meet an old girlfriend, Ugo, would later prove to be a costly decision for Dimka. During the Nigerian Civil War and after the war, Dimka had served as an officer in Afikpo and was very popular among the people there. He was not someone that could hide in Afikpo, even at night. He was a jolly good fellow among the locals. He had a lot of friends, and so it was easy for people to identify Dimka. Dimka was seen strolling near the Afikpo Mosque and later seen checking into Friendship Hotel Afikpo. He checked in with a fictitious name. He later sent for Ugo, who came to the hotel to spend the night with him. The first room he checked into had burglary proof, but Dimka insisted that the room be changed for him. He got a room that had no burglary proof. This was done with a reason. The unprotected window would later serve as his escape route. While there in the hotel, information got to the army and the hotel was surrounded at night. But the soldiers only concentrated on the front of the hotel. The soldiers began checking the hotel room by room, and when they tapped on a nearby door, Dimka told his girlfriend Ugo to go and open the door for them, while Dimka escaped through the toilet window and ran away. He went through the farmlands and then entered a vehicle across the road to escape to Abakaliki. Every 3 kilometers on the road had a roadblock. At a point on the journey, Dimka voluntarily handed over himself to a police sergeant at a checkpoint. He told him, I quote, "I am Dimka, the man you have been looking for." He brought out his hands and was immediately handcuffed by the policeman, who then took him away and handed him over to the military. Dimka was later tried by a military tribunal, and to the surprise of many, Dimka did not deny his involvement in the coup throughout the sitting of the tribunal.
But at least I want to talk. Whatever was going to happen to me, I mean, let it happen to me. But I wanted to break in. I was just coming to this and well, I didn't have enough time. But I thought the initial stage was going to allow me to do that. Anyway, I thank you very much actually for having come. If I did, there's anybody who enjoys
Of course, being a soldier, I made it a point of duty that I have an honor to maintain, and I believe I have no reason at this stage to lie. So all that you have heard has been my recording, personal recording.
On 15th May 1976, Dimka was found guilty by the tribunal and was publicly executed by firing squad at the Krikri Maximum Security Prison in Lagos. It is stated that even after being tied to the stake for execution, Dimka requested that the younger officer who was stationed to shoot him should first give him a salute and compliment as a senior military officer. This brought to an end the military career and life of Colonel Bukar Suka Dimka.
There are conspiracy theories about the cause of his death. One of such stories linked the West to the killing. Many believe that his Africa has come of age speech, which he delivered 32 days before his assassination at an extraordinary meeting of the OAU held in Addis Ababa, might have incensed the Western power that eventually planned his assassination. But some of his colleagues think the general was partly responsible for his tragic end. They believe he made a fatal mistake by refusing to take his personal security more seriously. 1. He did not relocate to Doden Barracks where he could be safer. Rather, he continued staying in the house he occupied before he became the head of state. 2. He often rode without convoy of security personnel. A few days after his assumption of office as head of state, he reportedly drove alone in his personal car with his driver from Lagos to Kano, a journey lasting more than 13 hours. Media reports claimed his deputy, Olusegun Obasanjo, urged him a number of times to be more security conscious, but he dismissed the warning, saying, "If the coup plotters succeeded in killing all of us, good luck to them." Murtala Muhammed's death was a great loss to Nigeria and the world. His legacy, however, lives on, as he is remembered as a courageous leader who fought for justice and equality for all. His life and tragic death serve as a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who seek to bring about change and make the world a better place.